Welcome to Cast On Day and happy St. Patrick's Day as well. I'm Jana with Pearl Together, and today we're casting on the Ripples sweater. At least I am. We're starting the sweater soiree, which means you can knit whatever sweater you want for the sweater knit along, but I'm doing tutorials for the Ripples sweater designed by Hilary van der Sluis. I probably didn't say that right. If you haven't seen my interview with Hilly, check out the link down below in the video description for a podcast we did recently. That was a lot of fun. Also, you need to swatch. I know, but do it anyway. The swatching video for the sweater knit along is also down in the video description. So be sure to swatch before you cast on if you want your sweater to fit. Okay, before we get started with the cast on, I have a whole big round of thank yous to send out to new patrons we've had in February and the first part of March. So thank you so much for supporting the channel. A big heartfelt thank you goes out to Cindy, Kathleen, Wendy, Gail, Sherry, Mary, Christina, Andrea, Audrey, Glenda, Sharon, Karen, Sheila, and Teresa. Thank you so much. I'll put your names down below in the video description as well. And I so appreciate your support. I couldn't keep doing this without the support of my patrons. So if you're interested in seeing what I offer for a small monthly pledge, head over to patreon.com/Pearl Together to check out the various levels of patronage. Again, couldn't do it without you. Let's get started with the cast on. And this week, we're also going to tackle those 12 rows of corrugated rib. Now, 12 rows doesn't seem like a lot, but it takes a little while, especially when you've cast on the whole bottom of the sweater. So that's several hundred stitches all the way around, but it's so satisfying to see all those colors come together.
Okay, let's get started. I'm going to use the long tail cast on. You can do whatever cast on you prefer. I'm going to start out by using the inside and the outside of this giant cake of yarn. And the reason I do this is so that I don't have to drag out a big tail and then be unsure how much I need for my cast on. So I just tie the two ends together like this with a slip knot, and then I'm going to draw this up tight on the needle. We're not going to use, this will not count as our first cast on stitch, and we'll get rid of this. We'll get rid of this double slip knot later on. So I'm just going to use one side and the other side in the same way that you would for your regular long tail cast on. Now, I don't do it all in one hand like many people do. I just, make my triangle like this and I go up under and I wrap. Now, a lot of people don't do it that way. That's just my method. I have a video showing how to do this long tail cast on using the inside and outside both of your cake or your ball. And I just find this easier because I don't like messing with how much I'm supposed to drag out from my long tail. So I am casting on the whole whopping 336 stitches. So I'm going to put a marker after every 50. And I'll be back in a bit. And after we cast on, we will begin the corrugated ribbing. So I'll see you. Okay, when you're finished casting on all the stitches that you need, you just need to pick which one of these you want to cut, because you don't need both of them anymore. And again, when you double count the sections, you want to make sure that you are not including that first slip knot there where we have the double and the slip knot. You don't count that as a cast on, okay? So then I prefer to knit from the outside of my cake, so I'm going to cut this one and then just continue on with joining the round. And I'll show you how I prefer to do that as well. Okay, so I've cut that and I'm just going to stuff the end back down in the middle because I prefer to knit from the outside because I don't like when it collapses on itself. And I know you can buy those little yarn cozies. I just don't choose to do that. So I've left myself a pretty good, 6 or 7 inch tail here. And I'm going to go through now my entire cast on and make sure that my edge, like that nothing is twisted. I want to make sure everything is lined up really well and everything is straight and not, see a bunch of this is coiled around. So I'm just making sure that everything is straight. You definitely don't want a twisted cast on when you join in the round. That would be bad. Okay. Now I'm going to curl around my needle and make into a big giant circle. I am currently using a 37-inch circular needle because I am casting on the largest size. So Often people will ask me, well, how do I know how long of a cable I need? Well, that depends on the size sweater you're knitting and how many you're casting on. You can always do magic loop if you have too long of a cable and you're knitting a smaller sweater. That's totally fine. And you can always, change the length of your cable later if necessary. Okay. So now I've got this tail, and I'm going to have this be on the top. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to turn everything over so that I have my working yarn here closest to me, and I have my starting slip knot, which I'm going to get rid of in a minute, on my left side. Now there's a couple different ways you can do this. You can cast on an extra stitch and then pass it over to the left and knit two together to begin. I've done that in the past and I find that it just ends up kind of loose and sloppy. So I don't really care for that. I'm going to take this extra slip knot now that we began with, and I'm just going to slip it right off. But I'm going to hang on to it. I'm going to go ahead and remove that, but I'm going to hang on to these tails so that this stitch is still pretty firm for now. Then what I'm going to do is take the tail that I ended with, the tail that is the one I cut. I'm going to go into this first stitch as if to purl, and I'm going to just take the tail, not my working yarn, but the tail, and I'm going to wrap it around counterclockwise like a reverse wrap, and I'm going to pull it through that first stitch all the way through. Okay, now what that's going to do is allow me to pull that tight. Then I just tie a knot. Honestly, I tie a knot with that to my working yarn. I just do a square knot, right over left and left over right. It's hard to do one-handed because I'm holding this, but you can manage it. Okay, and I find that that gives me, it's not very elegant. I realize it's utilitarian, but it gives me a pretty good start. All right, now that's a little bit loose still until I get going, and that will, because of this first stitch, I'm going to hang on to this and tighten it up again. I'm going to hang on to that tight, knit one round, and then we'll begin the corrugated rib. So we're just going to knit this first round. Oh, putting a beginning of the round marker is always a wise choice right here. Okay, there's my beginning of the round marker, and I'm just going to knit my way around one time. And that first stitch, I'll probably just give this tail a little extra tug there at the bottom just to make sure that I'm not going to have a weird, really loose join there at the beginning of the round. Okay, we're going to knit one round and then begin the corrugated rib. Okay, I've knitted one very long round because I'm knitting the biggest size, and this is my beginning of the round marker, and the ends I'll need to weave in later. Now I've stopped 5 or 6 stitches before my beginning of the round marker because I'm going to show you how I'm going to introduce my new color and weave it in to start. You don't have to do this. You can just start knitting with your new color if you want to. This is just a little something I like to do to secure it at the beginning. I'm going to take my new color and leave a, 4 or 5 inch tail, I suppose. And when I get ready to start, I'm going to go in as if to knit just like normal, and I'm going to lay that new color right on there. And I'm not doing anything with it, except I'm just going to lay it right on there. I'm actually going to make sure that it's over the working yarn. Make sure it's laying it over the working yarn like this. And then I'm just going to go ahead and wrap my knit stitch like normal. And I've just kind of got it trapped there. So I'm going to knit the next one like normal, and I'm going to do that again, where all I'm doing is now laying this new color over my right needle, wrap like normal for your knit stitch, and then take that back over. So you're not pulling it through, and then I'm just going to knit my next stitch. So I just do that a couple of times to secure it on the back. You're kind of just, see there, you're just tacking it down on the back just to secure it before I start knitting with it. So again, go in like normal for a knit stitch, lay that color over the top of your right needle, wrap like normal, and then take it back down. Okay, so I've done that a couple of times, 2 or 3 times. Now I'm at the beginning of my round. I'm going to bring my stitch marker to the front so I don't trap it in my contrasting color. And then we're going to start knitting 2 by 2. So 2 of your main color and 2 of your contrasting color. Now, I'm not very good at knitting continental with my left hand. You can do whatever works for you here. I just go in as if to knit, and then I've got that wrapped around my pinky and I just wrap it loosely. Now the key here to not have any puckering, the key is spacing of your floats. You want to make sure that you have good spacing so things are not too loose, because if you have things mashed up like this, then your corrugated ribbing is going to be way too tight. So be mindful of your spacing here so that your floats are long enough not to cause any bunching and tension issues. So that's important all throughout this sweater. Whoops. Okay, now if you are good at continental, you can hold your yarns like this, wrap, and bring that through, and just pick it and bring it through. Again, being mindful of that spacing. I'm not very good at that. So you do what works best for you. I have some videos on tips for Fair Isle, which is just a stranded color work, and that might be a little bit helpful for you here. But all of this is going to change anyway in the next round when we start purling with our contrasting color. Okay, so we're going to knit our whole round. We're going to knit our whole round like this, being mindful of your spacing, just knitting 2 and 2. Okay, I've gone around my first row of the corrugated ribbing. Okay, now it's going to get a little tricky because we're going to knit 2 in our main color and purl 2 in the contrasting color, which can feel pretty awkward if you're not a continental knitter and you're not used to doing a purl with your left hand. It's a little tricky. It's a little awkward, but you have lots of options. So let me go through this with you. So you're going to knit 2 with your main color, yarn forward, and then you're going to purl 2. Now, if you're a continental knitter, this doesn't feel awkward at all, but obviously I am not a continental knitter, so it is super loose and awkward. You can also just be like me, grab your yarn, pull it around, and try to maintain that tension as you're purling. But likely this last stitch right here is going to be a little loose and wonky. So give that a tiny little tug to snug it up and make your stitches even before you take your yarn to the back and knit the next 2. Okay, now the reason we hold the contrasting color in your left hand if you're a right-handed knitter is because it's all about color dominance. Most of the time when you're doing stranded color work, you hold the contrasting color in your non-dominant hand, or the pattern color, the color that you want to be the strongest, because it is looser and it pops more. Also, it has to do with the length of the floats in the back. Now, if that's super awkward and you don't want to deal with that and you're not concerned about color dominance, you totally could just switch things around so that you can purl with your right hand as you're used to it, which is certainly easier and more comfortable, and you can control your tension that way. Now, is that technically correct? No, it's not. But you do you because you are the boss of your knitting. And if it's going to take you a year to get all the way around doing it the other way, then we don't want that, because we don't want you to get frustrated and give up. So you do what works best for you. If you're an English knitter and it's easier to switch things and control your tension, then put the color in your right hand. If you can do it continental, or you can figure out a method that works for you to keep your tension, then great. Put you're a right-handed knitter, put that contrasting color in your left hand so it is more dominant. So the point here is you just do what works best for you. Okay, I'm about to join color number 2 and be finished with color number 1 for now. So in the same way that I started color number 1 before, I started weaving in the end of color number 1 before the beginning of my round, I'm going to do the same thing with my next color. And then, when we do the finishing, when we're done with our sweater, I'll be sure to show you how I'm going to weave in my ends later on. So I'm just going to go in as if to knit, and I'm going to lay this color over my right hand needle. Go ahead and wrap that and bring the color back down. And then the next stitch is going to trap that down. I'm going to go ahead and let that hang for a minute while I finish off with my purls with my darker color number 1. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and cut color number 1, but leave myself a good 6 or so inch tail. And I'm going to show you how I'm going to weave that in going the other direction. So I'm going to leave this here for a second. go ahead and slip my marker, knit the next 2 stitches. But when I knit the next 2 stitches, I'm going to take my new color, the lighter color number 2, and again, lay that over the right hand needle, do my knit wrap, and then lay that back down. And that's just going to tack it again before I'm ready to use it. And then I'm going to go ahead and bring that yarn forward and purl with it. Do that a couple times. Now what I'm going to do is go in as if to getting ready to knit, and I'm going to take the darker, this was the tail from color number 1, and again I'm going to lay that over the needle, wrap my knit stitch, bring that back down, just so that we're going to carry that along behind, and then knit the next stitch. So what that does is that just tacks that the color that I'm finished with, that just brings the tail along behind and tacks it down there. So then I'll weave this in again later, and you can do that tacking down maneuver again on this next section, the next 2 knit stitches here. Okay. And then we're just going to continue with our corrugated rib all the way around. And I know at this point, it takes a long time to do, it does take quite a while to go do 1 round. So I will be back in a while and show you how mine's coming along. So again, before I knit this next set of knit stitches, this pair, I'm going to go in as getting ready to knit, take the tail from color number 1, and I'm just going to go ahead and tack that down again. And then I will weave in the rest of this when it's time to do our finishing later on. Okay. So carry on with your choice of color sequence, and I'm going to do the same, and I'll show you what it looks like shortly. Okay, I am loving the corrugated rib and the colors for the Jewel Tone Pearl Together kit. If you need this kit, I'll put the link down below in the video description for that as well. Now, I still have 2 more colors to go, but because I'm casting on the largest size, that takes quite a while to get around one time, and I didn't want to hold up the video for that. So watch my social media if you want to see the finished section of corrugated rib, but for now, this is what I have, and I'm loving it.
I'm really happy that you're joining me for this sweater knit along. Head over to my Pearl Together group on Ravelry. You can also tag me on Instagram as we go through. Okay, also we have a Facebook group. You can get some details over there too. Thanks so much for knitting with me. It's going to be a blast for the next 6 weeks.